Yeah, so I definitely would say that most programs are looking for you to have a master's degree before
Mhm.
applying to PhD programs, but I can definitely say that there are a handful of students, whether it's at Harvard or other PhD programs in public health, that do get in without the master's. If they have the strong research background, it's not like not having the master's completely excludes you from being considered in the program. Yeah, so that's
Uh,
also a really good question, and I get this one a lot, and
mhm,
my first answer whenever someone asks this kind of a question to me is that when
mhm,
I applied to PhD programs, I only had really 1 summer of strong
mhm,
research experience and 1 publication. That was it. So it's not like I had years of research experience or, like, a long list of publications
mhm,
or I had pretty limited experience. Like I think my length of time was short, but what I was able
mhm,
to do and accomplish in that very
mhm,
short period of time and the way I was able to describe it in my personal statement, I think is what made it stand out. So I don't think they're necessarily looking for the number of years or the number of publications, but more so like
mhm.
what how productive were you and what kind of outputs or what projects did you work on, how many papers did you work on, what kind of research did you do, and how do you then describe that in detail and talk about your passion about it in the personal statement. I definitely do. I highlight this a lot in a lot of my videos and my materials, but I think the one of the key
Mhm,
tickets into a program, it's not a ticket, that's a bad word, but a key sort of thing that helps you really get your foot in the door is
mhm,
um, connecting with professors and having a good conversation with them, um, ideally before you apply, sometimes as you're applying. So I would definitely do your best to try to at least talk to one of those three. You might not need to talk to all three of them, but if you can get one
mhm,
or two of them to go on a quick Zoom call with you, just so that they can put a face to your name, and that when your application
mhm,
comes through, they remember like, oh, I see your application. I remember talking to her on the phone or on Zoom, and we had a great
mhm.
little conversation about how she's passionate about dental work in a population setting. I don't know, I'm making that up, but
Yeah, yeah.
they can then connect that and then your application will automatically then stand out in their mind. So yes, I would recommend you reaching out on my have you found my website? Have I shared that with you? My kind of step-by-step guide of applying to PhD programs in public health. Okay.
Yeah.
At the end of this call, I will share with you or I'll email you a link to that
Mhm,
website, which has step by step what I did
mhm,
personally to apply to PhD programs. And in
mhm,
there is like my timeline. I even talk about how I reached out to professors when I did that and include an
mhm,
email template that you can send.
mhm,
And you can
mhm.
literally copy and paste that, just personalize your bits, and then use that to send to professors to ask them to get on a call with you. Well, yeah, I think it depends. So I would say most professors are willing to meet with students, but it
Mhm,
also just depends professor to professor. Sometimes I do know that there are some professors that have a policy where they don't meet with any applicants just to
mhm,
make it more
mhm,
fair. It's up to personal sort of preference at that point. So maybe
mhm,
this professor
mhm,
you reached out to, um, just has a policy where they don't meet in advance with students to make it more fair, or whatnot, which I can see happening as things are evolving. Maybe, at least
yeah,
when I was applying 5 or 6 years ago, like
mhm,
everyone, it was kind of like you really wanted to talk to someone before applying, but maybe like now things are evolving, and more professors are kind of trying to like even out the playing field. I don't really know, but I wouldn't take it as
oh,
a negative response at all.
oh,
I think even the fact that you had that email exchange
mhm,
is,
yeah,
that's a connection too, then when your application comes through, that professor will be like, oh yeah, I remember they emailed me saying that they were interested. And, even though I didn't meet with them, like they still took the
Mhm.
initiative to reach out to me. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I talk about this on my website, my
Mhm.
application website a little bit, but what I essentially did is I kind of had an idea of which schools I wanted to apply to. And then
Mhm.
within each school of public health, I tried to Google like who was doing tobacco related research since I was
Okay.
doing tobacco related research.
Hmm.
And that was
Mhm.
basically kind of the bar. As long as they did some kind of tobacco work, I would reach out, even if so my interest is very specific to adolescent vaping and substance use
Mhm.
prevention in schools. But I was
Mhm.
talking to professors that were doing like cessation, like, cigarette cessation among low income populations or, you know, tobacco marketing, so all over, but we did have the common thread of doing tobacco research, and that was enough for us to still have, a common ground when we were talking. And I will
Mhm.
say that I say this a lot in my videos and my content, but I think there sometimes is a over or just a lot of pressure on finding a professor that has the perfect research fit, or they're doing exactly the work that you do, and you can basically sort of, yeah, there's like complete
Yeah.
overlap and exact overlap. And sometimes I don't think that that's necessary. I
Mhm.
actually think, I didn't have that perfect overlap with my PhD advisor. And
Okay.
I still had a great PhD experience. And um, he was still a great mentor. We just didn't do exactly the same work at the beginning, but I got to expose myself and learn about a different area of tobacco research,
Mhm. Yeah.
while also going on and pursuing my own thing and finding
Mhm.
like other sort of like secondary mentors that did stuff that was more aligned with my research. So I grew my network even more. So I wouldn't worry too much about finding someone who exactly has your research experience, but do your best to just find someone who
Yeah.
might be doing something in the similar field, and then you can just talk to them. So I wouldn't worry too much about not having exactly that coursework. I mean, you're going to get a lot of that training in your
Mhm.
PhD. And you can actually talk about that in your personal statement, how you haven't had, a lot of quantitative statistics training yet. And that's why you need this program to get that training.
Okay.
I think I mentioned that in my sort of story arc is that I really only had like some qualitative training and no quantitative training before doing my
Yeah.
PhD. And I went in with no quant anything. And I was like so struggling at first with all the quantitative material, but then you do learn it. Like
Mhm.
I now on the other side can be like, wow, I can do stats a little bit now, so you will gain those skills through the program, and you can talk about that being one of your motivators for going through and getting a PhD is you want that stats training. Now, at the same time, I know
Mhm.
you want to at least show that you have some experience in
Yeah.
it. So anywhere that you can play up your quantitative experience, like I don't know what exactly you were doing for your research during your undergrad, but if you
Yeah.
did work on any projects, work on any papers, use any softwares, do any coding
Yeah.
with any data sets, I would just really highlight that in your personal statement and
Mhm.
be sure to write, like, I have had some quantitative experience doing X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z in my
Mhm.
undergraduate dental program research.
Yeah.
However, this program will, really further my knowledge and my training and actually applying these to, population health research questions. I don't know, something like that. Yes. I did an MPH
So
and I still had no quant experience after doing that. So
was
barely
under the
passed
impression.
my
Yeah.
quantitative analysis class that was a requirement for my MPH graduation or graduating. And
Yeah.
yeah, now they still took me and I still passed the classes and graduated with my PhD. So you can do it. Yeah, you don't need to actually upload your manuscripts. You could if you wanted to. Those definitely count as writing samples. Sometimes I forget, like I feel like if it asks if you had to upload a publication, I would do the publication and then if they also ask for a writing sample, then I would give like an old paper that I wrote. But if they didn't ask for anything and they were just like, give us a writing sample in general, then I attached my manuscript.
Upload it in the digital portfolio,
Okay.
something like that.
Maybe if you want, what you could do is I would then put all your publications like in the publication section, and then in the writing sample section, if you have something that's like, or honestly, you
Yeah.
could just provide like a report or a really good paper you wrote for a class. I think that's what I did.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't lose sleep over this writing sample part. Like, I think that I don't think this is what makes or breaks your application. I think a lot of people get worried about it because they're like, oh my God, writing sample. They want to see my
Yeah.
writing. People are always really anxious about that. But
Yeah.
like, if they see that you have publications, they're gonna be like, oh, great. And then they're just gonna be happy with that and move on. That's, I think, what they will be, once they see that, they probably won't be staring too much at your writing sample. Specific, like making sure that the person who's writing your letter, like, doesn't just write this sort of vague, generic kind of, there's nothing in it that is like special about you, or
Yeah.
specific or detailed about you. So I think the people who are writing your letters, like they kind of know how to write letters, or they have their standard sort of flow that they go with. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't worry too much.
Okay.
I would also obviously say, when they say things like, I've worked with 20 graduate students and
Yeah.
Jessica was the absolute number one best person I've ever worked with in my entire career, and they put something like that in the letter of recommendation,
Yeah.
that stands out. So when they're very,
Okay.
versus saying like, Jessica was a great grad student that I worked with. Those two statements say very different things. So that's what I meant by specific, detailed, and very tailored to you. So
Yeah.
statements like that, the more specific they are, like the more stories they can tell, I think the better. So at least at Harvard, through the PHS program, it is fully funded. You get 5 years of funding. You are expected to TA or do part-time research, and that's pretty typical of most PhD programs, that funding model I just described. So if I were you, I would not go to a PhD program that requires you to pay any of your own money for tuition. And in fact, you should be getting a stipend as well. You like, not should, you must, you should get a stipend also, as a PhD student, on top of all of your tuition fees, insurance, etc. covered. I mean, I have it all on that website. I know I keep saying that, but I will, a lot of all my tips are on there. That's why I created that, because I was having so many of these conversations with students. I was like, I should just write this all down somewhere. So, you'll see that is a gold mine of information, and probably will answer all of the questions that you have. But all I can say is that, like, it's such a big deal, like in a like great way, that you're applying, you're putting yourself out there, you're emailing professors to talk to them, you're putting together your materials. Like, it's a big deal that you're applying to this program. Yeah, well, that's great. I just think it's, so wonderful that you're applying to these programs. It's a big deal. It's a lot of work. But keep it up. You got this. It sounds like you have the passion, you have the experience, you have you're getting all the different things together, and like I said, working very hard to do it. So just keep it up, and I only know that you will